the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful. So, Master's Day of Judgment in which we now live, Thee alone do we serve, and Thee alone seek for Thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path of those upon whom Thou hast bestowed Thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom Thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after they heard Thy teachings. Say He, Allah is one God. Allah is He of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is He begotten, there is none like Him. And I bear witness that none is to be served, worship, or praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is Thy true servant and last apostle. Ameen. We'd like to acknowledge the brothers and sisters who extended us the greetings of Assalamu Alaikum. We have the Rafiq family. We have Sister Betty Jewell from Chicago. We have Sister Tawana Muhammad from Madison Heights. We have Brother Hanif. And we have Brother Elijah Shabazz from Virginia. I'd like to say in the name of Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, and in the name of His last and greatest messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I'd like to greet the brothers and sisters with the Nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. Today, we want to talk about the January 15th, 1965 Muhammad Speaks, and the title is Elijah Muhammad. And the article that we're going to talk about is Victory of the Apostle. And we're going to continue talking about the hypocrites. But this is the same victory of the apostles that's in the message to the black man. And we starting in the middle. The messenger says, this chief hypocrite took a group with him to build a mosque in opposition to me, and filled it with all types of wickedness and disbelievers like himself. Now, Malcolm intentions, because if you read all these early articles about him building this mosque incorporated, he really thought he was about to have something better than the message.
Right, yeah.
I never, until I started researching this stuff, I never heard this stuff. He really thought his temple was going to be better than the message.
Right.
I couldn't believe some of the stuff I was reading. Like, are you kidding me?
Right.
He actually thought that his temple was going to be better than the messenger. But the people who love Malcolm and say he was better than the messenger never talk about the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, because it failed.
That's right.
The messenger shut it down.
Yep.
Like real talk. When you listen in the laborers meeting, when the messenger was talking about when he was telling the captains, he was like, when you put a brother on the door, he said you could be putting a hypocrite on the door.
That's right.
So he said, when you watch him, don't watch him one time, watch him all the time.
That's right.
Because Malcolm actually was having people infiltrate the temples in the Nation of Islam. I didn't know that. He actually was having brothers who were Muslims who was actually with him. So this thing with Malcolm was getting real serious.
Right. Yes,
You know what I'm saying? When you read the history and study the history, and then you relate it back to what the messenger saying, like, oh, that's why he was saying that. Because some of the stuff that he was saying, especially in the laborers meeting, was related to Malcolm X.
Right.
And the stuff that he was doing.
Right.
But a lot of the stuff, if you don't really know the history and the dates of when stuff was happening, you wouldn't know why the messenger was saying some of the stuff he was saying.
Right. That's right.
So he says this chief hypocrite, because we see in last week's article, the messenger said that Malcolm was the greatest hypocrite he ever saw.
Right. Yes, sir.
And he called him the chief hypocrite. So we always got to remember how the messenger described Malcolm X.
That's right.
He never talked about any minister, any captain, or anybody as he's the best. He always gave brothers credit for what you did.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? But he always let it be known he's one of my hard-working ministers.
Yes, sir.
He's one of my hard-working captains. He never put it out there like this brother was better than that brother. All of this other stuff came when Malcolm turned hypocrite.
Yes, sir.
So we want to read some of the stuff that Malcolm X was actually saying about his mosque. This mosque that he was building in opposition to the messenger. This comes from the July 3rd, 1964 Daily World. And the title is called Battle Cry Demises Malcolm X Reversing Preachers Coexistence. And this is in the middle of the article. Malcolm says, I have done a complete about face, and I'm man enough to admit it, even if it makes me look ridiculous in the eyes of the world, he said Thursday. He says, and went on to explain in an exclusive interview with UPI why he has rejected the teachings of black Muslim chief Elijah Muhammad, whom he served as chief lieutenant for 12 years. Malcolm says, when I lost my confidence in Muhammad as a person. Now think about that if you was a brother back in the day and you listening to him say that about the messenger.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
As a person, not like just the messenger. Right. He talking about as a person.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff you see in the messenger do.
Right.
And this brother who used to be in the nation.
Right.
Going to the world telling them that he lost confidence in the messenger as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, I began to re-examine his philosophy, perhaps objectively for the first time, and his doctrine, his entire organization and behavior pattern. He says he teaches hate and offers something that is unobtainable. I believe the black man needs something more. I try to show my followers how they can get something more. Your brother was saying, I was like, wow. He said he thinks what the messenger is giving to the black man is something unobtainable.
Mm-hmm.
Said he think he could give us more. That's what he was saying at first.
Right.
Before the messenger turned the heat up on him.
Right.
Because the messenger started getting sick of all of this stuff
Right.
Malcolm was saying.
That's right.
All praise due to Allah. And that's the Elijah Muhammad. We don't never be talking about him.
Right. Yes, sir.
Because the messenger began to hate Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
For real. If you listen to what he was saying, if you look at the history of what brothers was doing,
Mm-hmm.
based on what he was saying,
Right.
messenger, he began to hate Malcolm. And he didn't care what let the world know.
That's right.
He began to hate him from some of the stuff that he was saying. Then Malcolm went on to say, we don't believe in any of Muhammad's philosophy of separation. We believe the Afro-American should have his full part in the entire American experience. I never knew Malcolm said that.
I didn't hear.
They try to make Malcolm seem like he was still so hardcore militant, still this hardcore brother. But if you read some of the stuff he was saying, he was flip-flopping.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he'll talk about this and we gonna do this, then he'll change it to that.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't never talk about this Muslim Mosque Incorporated. They act like that don't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
They just talk about some of the speeches that Malcolm made.
Yeah. Right.
But they don't talk about this Muslim Mosque Incorporated.
That's right.
Because
Mm-hmm.
they stick to just saying that the Malcolm X attracted people to the Nation of Islam. That's what they try to do. They try to stick to the things he was saying while he was a Muslim to make people believe that he was better than the messenger.
Yes, sir.
But this Muslim Mosque Incorporated was supposed to be him showing what he really thought, how he really feel. Because he said in another interview, he said for the 12 years he was with the messenger, he was in a religious straitjacket. That's what he was saying. He said that the stuff that the messenger was saying was what he made him say. And that's why he was totally denouncing him. Yeah, he made it plain. I was in a religious straitjacket. I couldn't say what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But now I got this Muslim Mosque Incorporated.
Right. Yeah.
Now I'm going to show them what I can do.
Right.
But people don't never talk about this Muslim Mosque Incorporated.
That's right. That's right.
So he says, we believe if America says we are citizens, no, he says we have made such a great sacrifice to America as slaves and as soldiers. We believe if America says we are citizens, we should have our rights now, not by degrees, as some courts and others say. If they are ours, they are ours, and if we have to fight for them, we will fight for them. Malcolm X made it clear that his followers are being taught not to hate white people as a race. just oppression, segregation, and injustice which some white people practice. And this is the first thing you notice about all the hypocrites. They always stop with that hating all white people stuff. Mm-hmm. And they make it known, look, that's what he was telling me to do. I really didn't mean it. Right, yeah. Because the white man being the devil is what separates the messenger's followers as believers from everybody else. Right. All praises be to Allah. No matter how militant black people try to be, right, they love the devil. That's right. They don't really want nothing different from what the devil want. They just want the devil to treat them right. That's right. Because he's saying he wants the full American experience. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? If you see that the messenger is setting up a successful separate territory, mm-hmm, and you feel like you don't like what he did with these sisters, and that just shows how all that sister stuff was just some talk. Yeah. That's all it is. You had in your heart you was jealous of all praise to Allah. Because some of the stuff that the messenger taught, it's like, come on, why you abandon that? Right. That's right. If it was just about him being with these sisters, right, you ain't like nothing he taught? Right. Everything he said was a lie? Right. Like, no. Yeah. Not just because you saw him, because what he taught changed your life. That's right. So you don't think nothing that he taught now is worth nothing. It's just you going to change everything. It's like, no. All that stuff is a lie. That's right. So he says, Malcolm X made it clear that his followers are being taught not to hate white people as a race, just oppression, segregation, and injustice which some white people practice. We realize that all white people are not bad, he said. Elijah Muhammad taught that the whole white race was a race of devils. When I went to the holy city of Mecca earlier this year, I found white men walking arm in arm with black men. I wrote back to that effect, and it infuriated Muhammad. He was enraged. What he said? He went to Mecca and was arm in arm with white people. But he went to Mecca before. He went to Mecca for the first time in 1959. Right. And the thing that's beautiful about the white man, he keep good records. Yeah. He keep good records. Yeah. Even black people who did books on the Nation of Islam, they got transcripts of Malcolm's speeches. Mm-hmm. They got transcripts of him coming back from Mecca and what he said about white people. He said when he came back from Mecca, when he saw them white people in Mecca, he said a white man in Mecca saying he a Muslim is like a black man in America saying he an American. That's what he said. He saw them white people in Mecca. Right. That wasn't nothing new. Right. Just like when he was talking about the messenger said he was David in the Bible. And he tried to come back to the people acting like he trying to say he did that to the women and he's David. But the messenger was saying that David was accused. Right. So he knew how to play on words and how to use what people understood and knew and try to use it against the messenger. That's right. That's what he was doing, because he never said, I went to Mecca in 59 and I saw white people, but this time when I saw them. Right. He trying to make it seem like this the first time he went to Mecca, the first time he saw white people, and that ain't true. Right. And most black people don't know that. Right. So then, that's the end of this article. Then we got another article where he talks more about the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. And this comes from the June 16, 1964 St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And the name of this article is Revolution, Reciprocal Dying are Malcolm's Solution to Obtaining Rights for Negroes. And reciprocal dying means the white man killed one of us, we killed one of them. That's what reciprocal dying means. He was trying to be hard and revolutionary. So it says, Malcolm, who became a black Muslim when he was in prison in 1948, said that he has no idea how many followers he will attract to his mosque or freedom-fighting organization, both headquarters in Harlem. He said that he must work to create an organization that will follow the tenets of Islam in the best way we can find in a Western and highly mechanized society. It says Malcolm is confident his mosque will prosper. he will attract converts as well as defectors from the black Muslims he predicted. So this was like suicide for him. Say this in public. That he believed he about to get some Muslims. So I believe, I don't know exactly if this, but I know somewhere in here is when the messenger turned the heat up on Malcolm. Like, okay, he going too far now. Because you could tell by when you start reading these articles, the clashes that Malcolm X people and the Muslims was having. Messenger turned the heat. I don't think that Malcolm really knew the messenger like he thought he did. Because Malcolm in his lifetime was the first big hypocrite that he even ever seen. There never was a hypocrite like Malcolm before in the Nation of Islam in his time. So he never saw the messenger really turn on no brother like how he turned on him. So I think he wasn't ready. Because if you start seeing even on YouTube them videos of Malcolm, he started talking about how they out to get me, and you know what I'm saying, like trying to make, they beating up all their followers and all that kind of stuff because it was too much. He had realized he had went too far. Because the messenger turned the heat up on him. So it says many are leaving the black Muslim movement, especially the militant and young ones who have gone out because of the lack of activity, Malcolm said. When I entered the Nation of Islam in 1952 in Detroit, there were not over 400 active Muslim followers, Mr. Muhammad, and he had 10 mosques. By 1962 to now, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. This is the start of people trying to give Malcolm credit for the success of the nation. Because before this, they never related the growth of the Nation of Islam, the success of the Nation of Islam to Malcolm. It was the messenger. But this right here is the exact statement that everybody used to say Malcolm was better than the messenger. They say, you know, it was only 400 followers. When did the messenger say that? He never said that. He never even used to give people the official count of how many people was in the nation. He never did. He used to tell them, you know, if I give you a record now, we got 20 people who might join over here, or 15 people we don't know. That's how he used to answer. He never gave a number of how many people was in the nation. But Malcolm, he talking about it was only 400 people. It was only 400 people in 1952 when I came in. He said, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. No one can count the number of his followers, explaining there is no way of telling how many followers he has now, Malcolm says. I've gotten calls for helping and organizing Muslims in other cities, Philadelphia, Washington, Boston, and Los Angeles. So he telling them what city he gonna be up in there getting them brothers from these cities. It was suicide for this brother to do that. Because remember Boston. Boston is where the Louis X was. The same one who wrote that article. Boston is where Malcolm said he got some brothers in the temple he gonna get them out of to get these people. Just remember Boston. So we're gonna read what Malcolm, because Malcolm used to defend the messenger. And when he used to defend the messenger, he contradicted everything that he said when he left. How he contradicting the messenger. But first we're going to look at this article that comes from, it's the June 10th, 1964 Star Tribune. And the title of this article is Malcolm X Invited to Explain Therapy for Narcotics Addicts. And this is a article where the Harlem Hospital invited Malcolm to come talk to them about how the Muslims keep people off of drugs and addicted to narcotics. And this shows how people were attracted to the Nation of Islam, because this is in Harlem. It says, the claims of the black Muslim movement of phenomenal success in rehabilitating narcotics addicts and alcoholics are beginning to attract professional attention. So what attracts some people don't attract others.
Right.
That's a fact about anything.
Right.
You buying a car. You might like a red car and want that car. I might not like it because it's red.
Right.
It might have everything else I like, but because it's red, I don't want that.
Right.
That's the same way people were attracted to the nation. They wasn't all attracted for the same reason. And how you can tell that brothers who put it all on Malcolm, how much of a hypocrite they are, is all that the messenger's teachings offer to a black man. Think about that. All that the messenger's teachings offer to the black man and woman, but you are relegated down to they liked it because they liked how Malcolm taught. That's crazy. All of these different things the messenger's doing to wake you up.
Right.
But everybody just want to come in because Malcolm can talk so good. But this is the people in the Harlem hospital that are the professional people, and it says are beginning to attract professional attention. It says Malcolm X, the New York black Muslim leader, has been invited to explain the movement's therapy to the Negro Probation Officers Society of New York. The meeting has been scheduled for April the 20th. Psychiatric social workers of Harlem Hospital who have been struggling with widespread narcotic addiction also have approached Malcolm in the last year. It says Milton L. Martin, a psychotic social worker in mental hygiene department of Harlem Hospital, admitted Thursday that he and his colleagues have been so amazed at the number of Muslims that they encountered who have been addicts that they decided to seek assistance of the movement. They saw so many people. Now Malcolm in Harlem talking, they wasn't attracted by that. They listened to him all the time. But what attracted them was like, wow, look at all these Muslims who used to be addicts.
Right.
And now they ain't on drugs no more.
Right.
How they do that?
Right.
All praise to Allah. Ain't had nothing to do with Malcolm's talking. They in Harlem. So they hear all this talking.
Yeah.
They wasn't impressed with that. They a different kind of people. They professional people.
Right. Yeah.
Talk is cheap
That's right.
when you dealing with certain people.
Right.
Certain people talk is enough. You can just talk them. And they'll be like, oh, that's good enough for me. But certain people talk is cheap. You don't have to show me some more than that. You talk good.
Right.
But what can you do? But the reason why Malcolm was so successful with his talk is because he could back it up with the Messages program.
Right.
So people saw something with his talk.
Right.
Because he ain't the only one who could talk. Martin Luther King could talk.
That's
Right.
right.
He was a good talker.
Right.
The brother from the Black Panthers, Eldridge Cleaver. He could talk real good too.
Right.
But he didn't have nothing to back it up. So that was the only thing that separated Malcolm from other good talkers. The Messages program.
Right.
So it says it has been known that part of the hardcore of the black Muslim movement is composed of rehabilitated narcotic addicts and alcoholics. The black Muslims led by Elijah Muhammad are dedicated to the establishment of a separate Negro nation. It says Malcolm himself has acknowledged that he also is a recovered narcotics addict. Everybody know what you used to do. Just like with Jesus, the brother who was blind. Everybody saw you when you was blind. Everybody saw what this man's teachings did for you.
That's right.
So you can talk all the talk you want to talk, but we saw what you was before you started following him. All praise due to Allah. That's what it is. You can say what you want to say about a person, but if what he did for you changed your life, it's like, well, what can you say about that?
Right. That's right.
What can you say about that? Because all this other stuff you say, that's hearsay. We don't know if that's true or not. But we know for a fact you was in prison.
Right.
You was on narcotics.
Uh-huh.
And when you start following him, you stop doing all that. So
Right,
what's
right.
up with that?
Right.
Tell us about that. What problem you got with that?
Right.
That's what we want to hear. But see, they don't all praise due to Allah.
Right.
They don't never talk about that.
Right.
What problem you have with what the messenger did for you?
Right.
Don't tell me nothing about them sisters.
Right.
Let them sisters speak for themselves. But what did he do to you? That's what I want to know.
Yes, sir.
But he can't say nothing about that.
That's right.
So he tried to mud wash the message with some nonsense.
Right.
So it says, Malcolm himself has acknowledged that he also is a recovered narcotics addict. He was suspended last year and forbidden to speak in public because of a speech in which he mocked the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. He retained his position as minister of New York's Muslim Mosque No. 7. Before he was silenced, he recalled once that he had been a narcotics addict 6 years before his conversion to Islam while serving a sentence in prison in Concord, Massachusetts. He was rehabilitated, he said, by Muhammad. See, this before he turned hypocrite. I was rehabilitated by Muhammad.
Right.
Then he says, Malcolm said that he used marijuana, opium, cocaine, and heroin before his conversion, and that he broke his addiction within 24 hours without the attendant withdrawal symptoms of convulsions. Convulsions, I mean. This is what he said. In 24 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Because of Muhammad.
That's right.
But now you going to say that because of some rumors you heard about him, that not his whole philosophy. You ain't with that, but how did you do this?
Right.
He ain't never explained that. How did you do this because of Muhammad?
Right.
Because you never explained how you did this and what his teachings did for you.
That's right.
You talking about something that ain't got nothing to do with this. But everybody saw it. And this is how the Nation of Islam's success was portrayed to the people before Malcolm turned hypocrite.
Right.
Because the messenger had more to his program than just a brother talking. Because Malcolm, we'll give him his credit. He could articulate the messenger's program real good.
Yes.
But it was the program.
That's right.
They called him, it says, Malcolm X, the New York black Muslim leader, has been invited to explain the movement's therapy. That's what they called you to do. To explain what Muhammad done taught y'all.
That's right.
That's what it is.
That's right.
And that's how Malcolm's position was portrayed to the public before he turned hypocrite. He was just somebody who could articulate the program.
Right.
That's what it was.
Right.
So we want to look at some of these speeches that Malcolm used to make to defend the messenger and see what kind of fool he sound like to talk against the messenger after you said what you said for him.
All right.
Malcolm X did a lecture at Harvard University. It was the Harvard Law School Forum where he defended the messenger. Now, in his autobiography, he said that when he was in prison, writing the messenger letters, he couldn't even write a complete sentence. But now, after Muhammad, you at Harvard.
Right.
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 I mean, how you do that? All praise to Allah. How you do that? Malcolm didn't even go to school. This is him just talking about the program. He ain't talking about English, math, science, law. He was talking about the messenger program at Harvard.
Right.
Because the transcripts from this speech is in Louis Lomax's book, When the Word is Given. They got this speech. He spoke at Yale. He spoke at Atlanta University. He spoke at Queens College. He spoke at many colleges just talking about the messenger's program. That's all the messenger had him for.
Right.
Is to tell people about his program.
That's right.
That was it. All praise to Allah. So let's look at what he said at Harvard. He says there are probably 100,000 of what you whites call Orthodox Muslims in America who were born in the Muslim world and who willingly migrated here. But despite the fact that Islam is a propagating religion, all of these foreign Muslims combined have not been successful in converting 1,000 Americans to Islam. It's about 100,000 of them. They ain't converted none of these Americans to Islam. But Islam is a propagating religion, meaning you're supposed to be spreading it. You're supposed to be getting converts. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
That's right.
So these true Muslims, they over here ain't doing nothing. And then he says, on the other hand, they see that Mr. Muhammad all by himself. That's what he said.
Right.
On the other hand, they see that Mr. Muhammad all by himself has hundreds of thousands of his ex-slaves turning eastward towards Mecca 5 times daily, giving praise to the great God Allah. No true Muslim in his right mind would denounce or deny this meek and humble little black man who was himself born in Georgia. the very worst part of this country, as a leader, a defender of the faith, a propagator of the faith, who has rekindled the light of Islam here in the West.
That's right.
All praises due to Allah. He said, no true Muslim in his right mind would denounce or deny this meek and humble little black man.
Yes, sir.
That's what you said.
That's right. That's right.
What you said.
Right.
He said his Caucasian opposers have never gotten even one responsible Muslim official to criticize or denounce Mr. Muhammad. They seek only in getting some jealous or envious little peddler or merchant who migrated here and wants to be recognized as some sort of leader himself. It's Allah.
That's right.
That's the power of Allah. Praise due to Allah. All these hypocrites.
That's right.
You can take their words of these old Muhammad speaks and just read it back to them.
That's right.
You ain't got to make up nothing.
That's right.
Just take some of them speeches
Right.
and be like Louis X of Boston. This is what you said.
Right.
This is what you said.
That's right.
This is what you said about Evelyn.
That's right.
This is what you said about all them so-called wives of the messenger.
Yes, sir.
So how they the wives of the messenger now?
Right.
That's why it's good to have these old Muhammad speaks newspapers. Praise due to Allah. You can take all the hypocrites. That's why the messenger said last week we was reading. He said, we got your name in black and white.
That's right.
We got your speeches in black and white.
That's right.
We got everything in black and white and recorded of what you used to say before you turned hypocrite.
Right.
And that's why the messenger also said you can never trust a hypocrite as being sincere.
That's right.
Say he lying going in and he lying going out.
That's right.
You weren't sincere.
That's right.
Because if you were sincere then you lying now.
Uh-huh.
Or you lying now, you was lying. Or you telling the truth now, you was lying in.
Right.
You ain't telling the truth both times. What is it?
Right.
Which one you gonna trust? You can't never trust a hypocrite.
That's right.
He says, they succeed only in getting some jealous or envious little peddler or merchant who migrated here and who wants to be recognized as some sort of leader himself, and who will therefore accept the Caucasians 30 pieces of silver to attack this man of God.
That's right.
That's what he said.
That's right. That's right.
He says, how would Mr. Muhammad ever make a trip into the forbidden areas of Arabia and visit the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, being welcomed and honored by its most respected religious leaders, the great imams themselves, if he himself was not recognized as a great religious man and a man of God, doing miraculous work by spreading Allah's name here in the West among 20 million ex-slaves of America? How could Mr. Muhammad visit the capitals of the Muslim world and be received by its respected leaders if he too was not recognized and respected as a Muslim leader by them? He visited Al-Azhar, the oldest mosque and Muslim university in the world, and had tea with the chief imam, the great Sheikh Sultak, who kissed him on his forehead in the true Muslim fashion. Yet the American Caucasians hope to block his success. You can't never trust a hypocrite.
That's right.
He says, they succeed only in getting some jealous or envious little peddler or merchant who migrated here and who wants to be recognized as some sort of leader himself, and who will therefore accept the Caucasians 30 pieces of silver to attack this man of God.
That's right.
What he said.
That's right. That's right.
He says, how would Mr. Muhammad ever make a trip into the forbidden areas of Arabia and visit the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, being welcomed and honored by its most respected religious leaders, the great imams themselves, if he himself was not recognized as a great religious man and a man of God, doing miraculous work by spreading Allah's name here in the West among 20 million ex-slaves of America? How could Mr. Muhammad visit the capitals of the Muslim world and be received by its respected leaders if he too was not recognized and respected as a Muslim leader by them? He visited Al-Azhar, the oldest mosque and Muslim university in the world, and had tea with the chief imam, the great Sheikh Sultak, who kissed him on his forehead in the true Muslim fashion. Yet the American Caucasians hope to block his success among our people continues to oppose him and say he is not a true Muslim. Malcolm. This is his word. Why people don't ever talk about this?
Right.
He was at Harvard when he was saying this. Amongst them scholars. Just a little bit of this speech. He kept going. Talking about the message. His whole speech was in defense of the Messages program. So all the stuff that these brothers be saying, if you knew the history of it, you can see what kind of hypocrite they are.
That's right.
They all hypocrites and double crossers.
That's right.
Because if you were sincere when you said this, and you saw that because the one thing about all of this with the wives and all of this stuff with the secretaries, brothers ain't about to fall out with his man about nothing about that.
Right.
I'm gonna keep it real.
Right.
You ain't about to fall out with your man about nothing about that. No. Y'all done had plenty friends who cheating on their wife, doing all kinds. You would just be like, hey man, that's bold. You ain't about to fall out with him and be going to public and telling about it, because even in the street, if that was your man, and we seen him do all of this stuff for you, and now you gonna come back to us and tell him his secrets, that was your man. We won't respect you. Who gonna trust you?
Right.
You out in the street hustling.
Right.
This was his man. They was hustling together. They was making money together. His man put him on. You in the street.
Right.
He come back and tell you some stuff on his man who put him on. You gonna trust him? No, you ain't gonna trust him.
Right.
Malcolm was a hypocrite for doing what he did to the president of life. No excuse.
That's right.
Even if that stuff was true,
Right.
I don't believe it. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe nothing about that stuff about the messenger, but even if it was true, you're a hypocrite for coming out in the public talking about him like that.
Right.
That don't change the fact about what you did to him.
That's right.
Because he ain't do nothing to you.
That's right.
Let them sisters speak up for themselves. You got investigators, you got all kind of people who could have stood up for their sisters if that was true. But you gonna come out and talk about him the way you did. That shows what kind of person you are. A hypocrite.
Right.
You wasn't really his true friend at all anyway.
That's right.
To talk about him like that. And most of them brothers who was with the messenger. And I like the fact that the messenger had enough loyal FOI to turn the heat up on Malcolm. Because all of them wasn't loyal to the messenger. Like Lou Excess of Boston. Like Muhammad Ali.
Right.
But the messenger turned the heat up so hot that they knew
Right.
I ain't side with Malcolm.
Right.
Because the messenger turned the heat up on them brothers.
Right.
Let's just talk about how the messenger turned the heat up on them brothers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it for a minute. Let's go to Boston.
Right.
The brother from Boston.
Oh, yes, sir.
Because they had an incident in Boston where some brothers got caught being Muslims in the temple and they messing around being with Malcolm. Because the newspapers used to record it because they thought that Malcolm was really going to do damage to the message. They believed that because all of this talk Malcolm was talking, he was the top lieutenant, so people really thought like, man, he about to break them down. So this article, it comes from the October 3rd, 1964 Daily Independent Journal. And it's called Black Muslims Weakened by Setbacks Defection. This says, on August 23rd, 2 defectors who had joined up with Malcolm X were given a severe beating on Boston Street by 11 members of the Fruit of Islam. Now, it was 2 of them, and they got a severe beating by 11. 11 FOI. 11 FOI gave these brothers a severe beating. 11 of them. And it says, the military type arm of the black Muslims. Other members of the Fruit of Islam stood shoulder to shoulder in a circle to prevent anyone from going to the aid of the 2 defectors. So they did the same thing that we read last week that they did in New York when they caught them Malcolm X followers. The other brothers who was there formed a chain around them so couldn't nobody help them. You got 11 FOI jumping on 2. You're already out enough.
Right.
Then the other brothers make sure ain't nobody gonna help. Everybody saw that. This was in Boston. The same brother that's talking this brother Malcolm stuff. This is how the messenger turned the heat up on Malcolm. This stuff was happening all over the country. Real talk.
Right.
It's another brother. He on with Malcolm. His name is Leon Amir. This brother was the karate instructor. The messenger said, "Don't watch him one time, watch him all the time."
Right.
He in there and he with Malcolm. He the karate instructor. Brothers turned on him. Whooped his head. They whooped his head. And he was with Malcolm on stage telling them about how they jumped on him. He was in the temple. The brothers watching you. Messenger got people watching everybody.
Right.
They see you. You the karate, you teaching them how to fight.
Right.
But they band together and jump on you.
Right.
That's how it was. All praise to Allah. And it wasn't just like that. Let's go even further with the messenger. Because he was making brothers choose who you with.
That's right.
Everybody had to choose.
That's right.
And it wasn't just with the messenger, with the followers. It was also with his family. Because a lot of his family turned hypocrite during this Malcolm time.
That's right.
A lot of them. This one
That's right.
comes from the Pittsburgh Carrier. This is the December 26, 1964 Pittsburgh Carrier. And the title is Muhammad's Son Favors Malcolm X. This says, Akbar disclosed in a telephone conversation from the Windy City that he and his father had reached no conclusion after a heated 4-hour talk. His father, he said, was insistent that he visited the various Muslim mosques throughout the country and downgrade Malcolm before the followers and depict him as an ingrate and a hypocrite. If he refused, he said, his father told him, "Get out of the movement and stay out, and I don't want to see you again." All praise to Allah. That's how the messenger was.
That's right.
With his son Akbar.
That's right.
This was the same son that he sent to Al-Azhar University
Yes, that's
in
right.
Egypt.
That's right.
Little son, he said they ain't want for nothing.
Right.
So you look at this article, was in the December 26, 1964 Pittsburgh Carrier. You look in, this is the January 1st, 1965 Muhammad speech. Now this, he was saying, Akbar was saying he was siding with Malcolm in December, on December 26. A couple days later, in the Muhammad Speech newspaper, the messenger got, it's at the bottom. Decree Akbar Muhammad. The messenger.
Yes, sir.
My son.
Yes, sir.
So what you think he felt about Malcolm?
Right. That's right.
This is son, his youngest son, who turned hypocrite. He had in there on Sunday, November 29, 1964, at Muhammad's Temple No. 7, New York City, a speech was made by Akbar Muhammad containing statements and views which were not in keeping with the teachings and principles of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah. It has therefore been decreed by the Messenger that Akbar Muhammad is no longer to be regarded as a follower of his in what Allah has revealed to his father in the person of Master W.F. Muhammad. Akbar is now classified as a hypocrite by his father and by all those who follow him.
Praise
All praise be to Allah. This is the message.
That's right.
And that's why you see Louis X of Boston and Muhammad Ali sided with the messenger. Because they saw what was going on.
Right.
Firsthand, what the messenger was doing to his family and what them brothers was doing to brothers who was in the temple, who they caught, who was with Malcolm. So they said, even though they weren't sincere, because as soon as Wallace changed the teaching of the messenger, Louis X of Boston and Muhammad sided with Malcolm X.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
This is Elijah Muhammad we don't want to talk about. We don't want to talk about that military Elijah Muhammad. We want to make up an Elijah Muhammad that's good for us. You know, somebody that we can. That's why all this oral history, I ain't buying none of this.
Right.
Where you show it to me in the Muhammad Speech newspaper about what you talking about. Because I've seen, even today, online, these brothers talking about Captain Joseph was the strongest captain in the nation. Based on what? Based on what? It's this oral history coming out of New York. So Malcolm was the best minister, not Captain Joseph. Now, if you was in New York, it's understandable if you love Joseph.
Right.
You're going to think your captain is the best.
Right.
But to try to make everybody see him like he was better than other brothers, no. The message said there are no big eyes and little U's.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, you can love your captain, you can love your minister, and quite naturally you would do that. But to get a history of the Nation of Islam as though Captain Joseph was the best, when you listen to the laborers meet, Theodore Hamza and them brothers in Cleveland was outselling New York.
That's right.
All praise to Allah. They're the best.
That's right.
That's not saying Hamza was better than nobody,
Right.
but he was doing that.
Right.
So based on that, how can you say that Captain Joseph was the best captain in the nation? Because the Muhammad Speaks is the #1 program.
That's right.
Now some people might go off that to say the captain in Cleveland was #1. He was the #1 captain. That might be what they go off then. Or somebody might think Joseph might be #1 because he was the captain for Malcolm X. Everybody got their opinion. But based on the fact, no. Because if you look at everything about the Messenger program, some brothers was good in this, some brothers was weak at this, some brothers was strong in this, some brothers was strong in other things. It wasn't no best.
Right.
But when you listen to the oral history of brothers, they always try to put one over the other. But the Messenger never did that. But we see that the Messenger started making brothers choose. Like who you with.
Right.
Because in this article with his son, Akbar, it also got, because his son further said, he says, if he refused, he said, his father told him, get out of the Muslim movement and stay out. I don't want to see you again. He says, professing his friendship for Malcolm, Akbar said he would never denounce him until his parents could show him that Malcolm was unworthy on the basis of the Islamic theology and the Muslim holy book, the Quran. It says Akbar disclosed that he had made up his mind to split with his father as early as last August, but wanted to have a face-to-face meeting with him before he made it final. Then you go on and read in the article, it's talking about Wallace turned hypocrite like some months before, and his nephew, the messenger's nephew, and his name was, it says, another defector from the Muslims was Hassan Muhammad, a nephew. So his nephew turned hypocrite. Now think about the messenger. He got bronchitis because there was a lot of speeches that the messenger was supposed to go to that he had to cancel in this year. You got Malcolm turned hypocrite on him and was mud washing him in the public.
Right.
Wallace turned hypocrite on him, mud washing him in the public. Akbar turned hypocrite, mud washing him in the public. His nephew, you had them sisters on interviews talking about them kids he was supposed to be his, but he still stood strong for the cause.
He should, right.
All praises to Allah. That's why he didn't count.
That's right.
Because if you go and look at this history and look at all that was going on for the messenger at the same time, he still had the 3-year economic program.
That's right.
He still had the Muhammad Speaks
Right.
newspaper. He was still doing all kinds of stuff while all this going on, and he fighting that.
Right.
Because he wasn't just sitting back, just letting them do what they wanted to do.
Right.
He was fighting back.
Right.
He was fighting Malcolm back. He was fighting Wallace back. He was fighting Akbar back. He was fighting everybody back with his ministers and with the FOI.
Right.
But they never talk about this stuff. You never hear people talk about that Muslim Mosque Incorporated and whatever happened to it. Because this is another article talking about how they found brothers. Let me see. They found brothers in, I think it was St. Louis. This comes from the May 11, 1964 St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And it says, descendant group trying to win members from Muslims here. It says, Malcolm X, former number 2 man in the black Muslims who recently broke away from the parent group, is attempting to extend his new militant organization in St. Louis, the Post-Dispatch learned. Clyde X, St. Louis leader of the black Muslims, has been notified by top national leaders of the sect that a man and a woman are working secretly here under the direction of Malcolm X to organize followers in his cause. The possibility of an attempt by Malcolm X to infiltrate the black Muslims have been discussed in recent meetings at the Muslim Temple of Islam, number 28 at 1434 North Grand Boulevard. Outwardly, the St. Louis black Muslims have not expressed any interest in joining Malcolm X, who has urged Negroes to buy arms and form rifle clubs for self-defense. Malcolm was going all out. They even had newspaper reports telling people in the public where these people were. They got 2 of them in here.
Right.
Just taunting the messenger.
Right.
The messenger even got a lecture where he was talking about Malcolm came to Chicago. I think that was the laborers meeting where he was talking about Malcolm came to Chicago. Talking about the messenger on the radio. Just taunting. Why he didn't, the messenger even talked about the hypocrite. He said they not satisfied with just leaving themselves.
That's right.
You mad at the messenger for this stuff you talking about, why you can't just leave? Why you gotta come to Chicago, get on the radio and talk, or just build your little group? Because there was a lot of hypocrites who left the Nation of Islam and built a group. The Muslims ain't say nothing to them if they ain't say nothing about the messenger. It was like they just left, because it was a brother, I forget his name, but he started some little group. And the Muslims didn't bother him. You know what I'm saying? Because the messenger said, once you turn hypocrite, I don't keep up with you.
Right.
The only hypocrites that the messenger, if you messing with the Muslims. But if you just left, started something, if you didn't say nothing about the Muslims, they kept on going.
That's
They
right.
weren't paying you no attention. But Malcolm X, he's up there mud washing the messenger.
Right.
Talking about him as a person to these FOI. Then we got another speech from Malcolm. And this one is from Atlanta University in 1962. This is what he said in this one. This is when he was in the nation. He says, in the past, religious roads leading through Black America presented smooth sailing for the old touring car of Christianity. They met few obstacles and had little opposition or competition. The drivers or the preachers had it easy. Their course was never challenged. They ruled supreme on the religious roads of Black America. However, today, this is making a great change. The religious roads of Black America have suddenly become blocked by a rocky barrier, and all the black and white preachers combined are incapable of removing it. The firm, down-to-earth, thought-provoking teachings of the religion of Islam. That's what he said. Down-to-earth, thought-provoking teachings of Islam.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying it was him. Never did they portray the teachings of the messenger like it was because of me. It's because of the thought-provoking teachings of Islam are now obscuring this path over which it was once easy sailing for these preachers of the white man's Christianity. Islam poses both a challenge and a threat because Islam is the resurrecting power. Thousands of so-called Negroes are beginning for the first time to think for themselves since turning away from the segregated church or Christian church and are rejoining the ranks of their black brothers and sisters of the East. Their age-old faith in the religion of Islam, the religion of our foreparents, the true religion of the black man, the spiritual leader and teacher of the many thousands of new believers here in Black America is Messenger Elijah Muhammad. Before we heard the teachings of Messenger Muhammad, we, the American so-called Negro, were in a grave of ignorance.
Right.
That's how he used to say it.
Yeah.
But when he built this mosque incorporated, that's when he started talking about it's me. And people stuck with that. Started talking about how it was Malcolm. But they never talk about the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Whatever happened to it?
Right.
Right.
Whatever happened with that? Like, whatever happened with it? How many members did he have? How many
Right.
people did he track in New York?
Right.
They never talk about that. Then we have another. This comes from James Baldwin's book. His book is called The Fire Next Time. This is what he said attracted him to the Muslims. He says, I have long had a very definite tendency to tune out the moment I come anywhere near either a pulpit or a soapbox. What these men were saying about white people I had often heard before, and I dismissed the Nation of Islam's demand for a separate black economy in America, which I had also heard before as willful and even mischievous nonsense. So he's saying, I listen to all this talk. Heard it all before. I done heard Malcolm. I done heard all these people on their soapbox. I done heard it all before. He said, then 2 things caused me to begin to listen to the speeches, and one was the behavior of the police. I had seen men dragged from their platforms on this very corner for saying less virulent things, and I had seen many crowds dispersed by the policemen with clubs or on horseback. But the policemen were doing nothing now. Obviously, this was not because they had become more humane, but because they were under orders and because they were afraid. And indeed, they were. And I was delighted to see it. So the James Baldwin, who was also in New York, he say, I heard all, and this was in 1963. This was before Malcolm flipped. He was just saying, I heard all this soapbox stuff. That didn't impress me. But when I saw the police, because the Muslims in New York, they had a brother was in court, and they had brothers carrying signs called, one says Allah is the greatest, another one they had signs for the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, and you see the police officer just standing there. You could see the police, when Malcolm used to have rallies, they would be standing all around. Police didn't interfere with the FOI. That's real talk. Because they had an incident at Savior's Day. This comes from the March 1st, 1965 Tampa Bay Times. And it's called Muslim Chief Appears, Critic is Beaten and Kicked. This says, Beautiful Islam Guard yesterday beat and kicked a man inside the convention hall where their black Muslim leader, Elijah Muhammad, appeared under the threat of death from the followers of the assassinated Malcolm X. The karate-trained personal bodyguards of Muhammad refused to allow the police in the Chicago Coliseum while the beating was going on. The brothers told the police, look, we handling some business.
Right.
This don't involve you. That was FOI, I'm telling you.
That's right.
Go back and read some of this FOI stuff.
That's right.
You'll be surprised.
That's right.
It says, the karate-trained personal bodyguard of Muhammad refused to allow the police in the Chicago Coliseum while the beating was going on. You can't come in here, a burly Fruit of Islam guard shouted as members of the task force pressed their way into the lobby. Moments later, a bearded 6-foot Negro was ejected from the hall. You can't come in here. So now they see them throwing him out. Hey.
That's right.
He was with Malcolm.
That's right.
Then it says, the man identified himself as William Greer. Now you can go on YouTube and Google William Greer, and they interviewed him while he was in the hospital. Go look at him. He was trying to act like he wasn't with Malcolm, like, oh, they just, no, you was with him.
Right.
It says, police did not insist on entering the Coliseum when the Fruit of Islam blocked their path. They just let it alone. Like these brothers, they handling what they handle. We not going to even try to force our way in. Ain't no point. This was FOI. So it says, the disturbance broke out in the tense hall an hour after Muhammad had arrived under heavy guard to speak to the final session of the National Convention of his black supremacist cult. As Muhammad sat behind the massed rank of his bodyguards, a disturbance broke out in the rear of the hall. A retainer shouted out into the microphone, whatever is going on at the back of the room can be taken care of. Fruit of Islam guards swarmed to the rear of the auditorium. Others jumped to their feet, shoulder to shoulder, forming a protective ring about the whispered preacher of racial hate. But them brothers just handled it. Told the police, we got it.
Right.
Even when they had the parade in Chicago, they said the FOI relieved the police and secured the whole south side of Chicago. The FOI. Oh, praise the Lord. They say it wasn't no theft, no robberies,
Right.
no break-ins, no none of that.
That's right.
You can see pictures of brothers standing posts on the corner, brothers walking up and down the street. That was the FOI. They wasn't playing with this Malcolm X stuff.
Right.
And this was the PG stuff of these brothers of what they were doing. Because when they found you and you was in the temple and you with this hypocrite, you got it.
That's right.
You got a severe beat. That's just the history. And also, this Muhammad Speaks newspaper right here, it's on the website. So y'all can go on the website and check this out. This that Muhammad Speaks newspaper that got Malcolm's head rolling in the street. And this one is the one where the messenger actually went to New York. Well, brothers and sisters, I don't want to prolong the time. So I'll leave you as I came in the nation of Islam, greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Brother and sister, rise for prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful. So, Master, the day of judgment in which we now live, the alone that we serve and the alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path, path of those upon whom thou bestow thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after they heard thy teachings. Say he, Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is ever to be served, worship, or praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farah Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is thy true servant and last apostle. Ameen. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us not to do anything to anyone that we wouldn't have done it to ourselves and treat everybody right, even the devil.